You are listening to Ace Comicals. I'm Greg, and today I'm joined by my co-host Rahul. Let's go! Hello, and welcome to the show. This is episode number 38, and I am joined today by just Rahul.
Hey Greg, how you doing? Hey
hello,
listeners.
hello, yes. And we have a few picks from the previous 2 weeks to chat about today, along with some other new stuff that has been going on that we've come across over the last 2 weeks since we last spoke to you. So, yeah, how have you been anyway, Ray?
I've been good. Sorry I missed the last recording. It's been a busy couple of weeks, but glad to be back on it now and reading my comic books.
It's cool. Don't worry about it. Me and Leon were fine.
Yeah, I listened to your episode. It was a very good one. I liked it.
We held the ship together. And speaking of holding the ship together, Shanghai Red, but that's coming later on. So we've got some new TV shows. Luke Cage has had a second season, so we've got season 2 of Luke Cage now on Netflix. That is the Luke Cage Netflix show that fits in with all the Defenders stuff and like the Daredevil show they've got and everything else, just to give people a bit of background in case they don't know, which by now I think they probably should, because I think the world is saturated with this stuff, right? But yeah,
Netflix's version of like all the Marvel slate. They got a bunch of standalone series. They've got it Luke Cage, Iron Fist. There's the only other one that I've watched that I can't remember the name of.
Jessica Jones.
Jessica Jones, yes, and which is great. I loved it. I need to get on all the rest of them.
So, Luke Cage season 1 was really cool. When I watched the first season, I remember being really impressed with it. And season 2 is just as good so far. I'm loving it. It's not. I don't really have. I mean, I'm 7 or I think 8 episodes in, because I was like sat there watching them back to back yesterday. I literally woke up, went for a walk in the morning, came home, sat down on the sofa with a bag of cashew nuts, and back to back episodes of. I started watching it on the Friday night. I watched a few on Friday night, and then I back to back up to like episode 8 or 9 or something. Episode 8, I think. Because I wasn't. It was just all blending together, and it was all a whirl. It was great. It's like watching like a super long movie. I mean, I know there's like, because I just kept hitting the skip intro button in between episodes.
Okay. Yeah.
So
it's one long elongated. Just one long storyline, which is something that these new slates do really well. These new series where they,
I know.
Stuff like I think Game of Thrones and things like that set the template of it just being a one concurrent one arc in a row.
Yeah, and it works really well, and it's really cool to just sit and watch it like that, but it's also really dangerous because you get absolutely nothing done, and you get absorbed by the television, and then you are the television is you, and you look in the mirror and your head is a big LG screen now instead of a face, and
like something out of Saga.
Yeah.
I'm sure if Leon was here, he would tell me off for using Game of Thrones as the template for these kind of storytelling. It's not at all. I'm sure it isn't.
Don't listen to us.
Don't listen to me, certainly, when it comes to TV.
Don't listen to either of us when it comes to TV, because Leon's the TV guy, and he'll be listening to this right now, like tearing his hair out or something. Yeah.
I mean, he's not here, but over on the other side of London, like he's just shivered and he doesn't know why. So cashew nuts, Why cashew nuts? Were they salted, dry roasted? Tell me more about the cashew nuts.
Oh, they were the plain ones. I'm boring.
Man.
I like roasted salted cashew nuts as well, but plain cashews are good. Quite like plain cashews. And the really dangerous ones, which are like totally bad for you, are the ones where they have, it's like peanuts and cashews in a bag together, and they roast them in honey.
Oh, that sounds great.
It is. It's amazing. You haven't lived. But yeah,
while we're on the topic of TV and cashew nuts, I finished watching Legion season 1, so not season 2, which is also out. And is season 2 complete now for Legion?
I don't know.
Leon's not here. Been watching it.
I've not kept up with Legion. No, I've that one dropped off. But I've made sure I've kept up with the Netflix Marvel shows, because they all kind of they sort of like bounce off the MCU, like they reference stuff that happens in the movies.
Yeah, I have a colleague at work, and he keeps telling me like little details. Even though I tell him that I don't really like spoilers, he keeps telling me little details about stuff that ties into.
Yeah.
I don't want to say exactly what, but like you mentioned, there are things from the larger cinematic universe which I guess the background details get explained away in a lot of the Marvel shows. Especially stuff like Shield, I think.
Shield, I think, is the big one for that,
which isn't a Netflix produced show.
No.
Yeah.
But the other ones, the ones that you get on Netflix, like the Defenders and stuff, and Luke Cage, will reference events from the movies, but they will reference them as like a... Easiest way for me to explain it is, when you're reading a comic and someone brings something up in conversation, then you get like the little note in the corner that says "see issue such and such of whatever."
Yeah, like the editor's note.
Yeah, the editor's note. Yeah, that's how it comes up.
Okay.
And it's cool to see that, and it's cool to see the interconnectedness of it and whatever. And season 2 of Luke Cage is brilliant. It's explosive. It's just as good as season 1, and it does some really interesting stuff, and does some really interesting stuff with some of what I will call some of the villains, some of what I will call Luke Cage's rogues gallery, I guess, but not really his rogues gallery, because he kind of shares them with other parts of the Marvel universe, because that's how Marvel is. But he some of the interesting stuff they do with some of the villains that they bring in, and the way they bring them in, and sort of ground them in that reality a little bit more. Because some of these characters, when they're in the comics, are like, they've got quite outlandish abilities and things, and it's not... I don't know if it would translate well to TV. Like, from Luke Cage season 1, you've got Cottonmouth, and in the comics, Cottonmouth can unhinge his jaw and open his mouth super wide and stuff.
Like
I think.
A snake.
Right? Yeah. I mean, they're all like... You'll notice that there's like a running theme with snakes with the bad guys across Luke Cage season 1 and season 2, because they're all based on a group of snake-based bad guys from the comic books. I'm trying my hardest not to like totally spoil this for you if you want to discover this yourself, but
I will do at some point. So how do they deal with that in the TV show? Like, taking away that slightly supernatural, slightly unrealistic, unhinged the jaw thing.
He doesn't do that. He's just like a really nasty mobster.
Okay.
Yeah. So they take that stuff off completely.
Yeah, because I do like seeing how, especially in like movies and whatnot, how they ground them a little bit more to just looking a little bit less absurd or over the top, like they can do in the comics, which they get away with.
Well, when I read the comics, the absurdity is part of the charm, but when you watch the TV show, you don't always want that.
Also, it's that uncanny valley thing where if you saw a human doing that thing, like a live actor, it would just look odd and maybe a bit silly and a bit laughable.
Yeah, it would, like the CGI and whatever else, and I mean, obviously they still do have that kind of element in there, because otherwise it wouldn't be a superhero show. So there's obviously still stuff happening, and there's still in season 2 there's a little bit of can I call it a supernatural element? I guess I can, and things like that, and it's really cool how it works. And and Misty Knight is great in season 2. I mean, she was good in season 1, but in season 2 she's great.
Okay,
it's like favorite character, MVP. MVP of season 2 is Misty Knight, but it's a good show, and I'm going to finish it off, and I'll probably talk about it again on another cast, and hopefully Leon watches some of it. But then again, he's 4 shows behind, isn't he? As he said this morning, because he told us on the we have like a WhatsApp group for us guys hosting Ace Comicals, and Leon. I was talking about Luke Cage this morning. I was asking if any of the other 2 guys were up to date, and Leon was saying he's 4 Marvel shows behind. And I think that's why he dared not come on the recording today.
I'm basically, I don't know however many Marvel shows have been on Netflix, but I'm all of them minus 1 because I've only seen Jessica Jones season 1.
That's why Leon's not here today. He just the shame of being 4 shows behind has just kept him.
Yeah, that's exactly why he's not here today. Because, like, you could be like me. You could either go hard or go home, right? Like, don't watch any of them or watch all of them, but don't half-ass it the way Leon does. Like, who needs that, right? He's
got 4 TVs on at once right now. He's trying to catch up for the next recording.
His Ozymandias with his, like, wall of screens.
So, Luke Cage Season 2. And in a callback to a question from a previous show, around reading habits and what we do when we read. I think it ended somewhere between IKEA and polystyrene, didn't it?
Doesn't it always?
Yeah. But,
eating cashews with chopsticks.
Yeah, the man who sold the world. But what I've been doing lately is like I've gotten again. I mean, like I go through phases with what I listen to music-wise, and again, I've gotten really into instrumental music again. So instrumental bands, and I quite like it for background music when I'm reading now. So, like, it's less distracting when you've not got. I mean, like, I can listen to music while I'm reading, but when you've not got lyrics that you kind of want to hum along to or sing along to, because sometimes I do that. I'll be listening to something and I'll feel like I want to sing along to it, and it will divert my attention away from whatever else I'm doing. So I find instrumental music is now better for that. And I've been sort of, as I'm reading, I've been trying to pick music that sort of like plays into the mood of the comic. So this is like what I was going to ask you actually, Ray, about soundtracking your comic experience, as a way to put it. Because I've been listening, because I've been reading Harrow County, as you will know from previous episodes where I've mentioned I've been reading Harrow County, because that comes to an end this month, which I'll talk about when I get to the pull list. But while reading Harrow County, I have been listening to a band called Earth, which have got this. It's droney doomy rock, and it's really slow, and it builds up. It's quite proggy in places. It's hard to describe, but it's really, really good, and it kind of it just sets the mood and the tone perfectly for a book like Harrow County. Because it's got that darkness about it, that Americana about it, which is what Harrow County is. It's set in the South in the 1920s, and it's to do with like black magic and witches and everything else. And it just works. They just work really well together. And like, it's like I was tweeting about it earlier this week actually, because as I was doing it, I couldn't not tell you guys that it was good. So. I had to do that. I think that was that Friday. I think that was I put that up. But yeah, and so that was that. That's what I've been doing. I've been sort of soundtracking my comics. I just wondered, do you do anything like that? Do you try and match the mood?
Not really for comics, because I tend to just read them in silence. I find like because I spend my day reading, like that's part of my job is researching and reading documents. And in the same way, I can't really have stuff that has lyrics attached to it, or I have to have stuff which is foreign lyrics. So, I listen to, I guess even Japanese lyrics. I can't listen to Japanese songs because I pick up on the words now because I read and speak some Japanese. But like I've been listening to a bunch of K-pop, but mostly I listen to instrumentals or like orchestral or classical. So like my main go-to for if I'm wanting to read something and I want something in the background to distract me, but not distract me from the words, I'll put on, like, my go-to is Max Richter, which I know Leon also likes, is a composer who does, soundtracks for movies now. Probably know his work from, like, I guess, trailers and things. I think he's done some quite popular tracks. He did the soundtrack for The Leftovers. I think he was featured on Arrival for the start and end themes. But he did an album called Vivaldi's Four Seasons Recomposed, which is basically like a modernized version of Vivaldi's Four Seasons. And it's a weird one because even if you've never listened to Vivaldi all the way through, if you listen to Four Seasons all the way through, you'll know basically at least you'll know part of the music just because it's so ingrained in pop culture these days. And he kind of takes it and twists it. So you'll have these little earworms of things you recognize from, your entire life that'll be dragged in and recomposed in this album. So I like to have that on in the background. I try and do game soundtracks. So recently I've been listening to the Nier Automata soundtrack, which is really good. And because that has gibberish language in the background, it sort of sounds like English, but it isn't English, and it could almost sound a bit like Japanese, but it isn't Japanese, and it has all these different linguistic influences, but not actually saying anything specific. That's kind of cool to get lost into when you're, trying to focus on words. What else have I been doing recently? I think the Studio Ghibli soundtracks, I found a cool YouTube video which has all of them played on piano. which is quite nice, and that's something quite calming and peaceful to have in the background when reading. And the other one recently has been the Into the Breach soundtrack, because it has this cool thing where it flits between 4 different regions of a map. And, one has this, like, desert techie vibe, and one has this cool, calming, like, foresty vibe. And there's, if you put that on shuffle, that changes the mood of the background quite a lot. So, yeah, I do it, but I generally just read in silence, I think. And I try and... You were saying tailoring the music to what you're reading. I guess I'm not very good at that. If anything, I do the opposite, where what I'm reading happens to fit in with the mood of what I'm listening to. So you do that thing where you listen to a song and you'll always remember the first time you heard it, or you'll remember where you were at a particular moment of a particular podcast you were listening to. Like, I like having that connection. I don't like doing it the other way around, where the music informs the content of what I've got in my hands.
Well, that's kind of how it works for me, because I'll listen to something and then I'll be like, you know what this makes me think of, what this conjures images of. And then that's how I'll pair it up. But then, so if you have, if you got an album that you already like, do you think to yourself, oh, I should go and read X comic while I listen to this because they fit the vibe together? Yeah, it sort of happens organically in my head. So I'll be listening to something I like, a piece of music I like or something, and I'll be like, oh, this actually vibes really well with comic X or whatever. Like I did with, this is what I did with basically Earth and Harrow County, because I was listening to Earth and I was thinking, oh yeah, Harrow County. That's exactly what this makes me think of.
Okay.
And that's how I paired it up.
That's kind of cool. Yeah. You should write these down and put them on the WordPress site or on our blog.
Well, I will. Then... I'll probably curate a playlist or something on Spotify at some point as well.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. Like curate what stuff that you think works well with the comics you've been reading for the week or for the fortnight.
Yeah,
I'd give that a go. It'd give me more incentive to like listen to new music and listen and read the new comics as well.
I'll have to start doing stuff like that. So I mean, like, I tweeted about this this week about like the connection between like the music and the comics, and I got a reply from Tyler Crook about, because I was tweeting about Harrow County, and he said that's pretty good stuff, but the actual perfect soundtrack can be found here. And it turns out Harrow County has its own soundtrack.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, that's so cool. People have made music for Harrow County, and he sent me a link for the Bandcamp.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, so like he replied to my tweet with this link for the Bandcamp, and that's pretty cool. So yeah, Harrow County has a soundtrack, and I've listened to it, and it's pretty good stuff.
Oh, then sod your soundtrack. I'm going to go check that one out.
That's what I mean. Yeah, some comics, like, I guess already do have soundtracks. I wasn't even aware that was a thing, but now I am, and now I'm all the happier for it, because now I've got music as well. So it's great. It makes it a 3D experience.
Yeah, it's cross-media. That's cool.
Yeah, Harrow County has a soundtrack, so you should all go and check that out on Bandcamp, and it's just literally harrowcounty.bandcamp.com. So if you like your Harrow County, which I do, which you should do, because it's a fantastic horror comic, and I will not have a bad word said about it. So, yeah, go check it out. I guess that brings us on to the purpose of the podcast, which is comics. So let's get going on the list of books that we've brought for you today. First one on the list is one that I picked out that I sort of like told the other guys to get on and read as well, which is a book called Shanghai Red. Now, this was published on Image Comics, and we have a creative team of Joshua Hickston, who is the art and colours. We've got Christopher Sabila, who is script and design, and Hassan Otsuman Elhal, who does letters. We've also got a Dylan Todd, who does the logo, and a variant cover by Tyler Boss. And we've got editorial assistance from Andrea Schockling here as well on the book. Now, this one, I had like an Image Previews book that I got it on New Comic Book Day, and I think there was a couple of pages from Shanghai Red in there. And then when I was doing my pull list, I sort of spotted this there, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna grab that and see what it's like. And then when I read it, I told Rahul and Leon to read it as well, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really different and really cool. It's kind of like a really good... When you think of stories set in the time period that this is set, I think this is like a really underused part of that time period, if you get me.
So what are we talking about? Do you want to set the scene?
Yeah. So we've got a young girl who she's been living as a man to try and get by and survive in society, to earn money to support her sister and her mother, and she gets shanghaied. Now, the act of shanghaiing is where, back in the time that this is set, if you needed crew for a ship to go on some kind of long, horrible, dangerous voyage that nobody would probably in their right mind sign up for, also to do it on the cheap because you don't have to pay them, you basically keep them as slaves, you would shanghai them, which would be to drug them or get them drunk or get them into a state where they wouldn't know what was going on, and then they would just wake up on the boat the next day out at sea, forced to be a sailor, basically, to survive.
Yeah, forced conscription.
Yeah, forced conscription, but it's like a really awful, nasty way of doing it. Because what they would do then is they would take you on a voyage without paying you, and then they would, at the end, they would kind of give you a choice of either you sign up or we leave you. We maroon you, basically, wherever we're going. So you can't come back on the return voyage unless you sign up to become a crew anyway. So by then they've got you, you know?
I guess the term Shanghai comes from the place where a lot of people were abandoned was in Shanghai.
You'd be Shanghai to Shanghai, I guess, yeah. Because that's where these ships would be going. They'd be going east.
Which is now, just to be clear, a bit of a contentious term, isn't it? Like, you shouldn't... I guess there's some dirty history to all of this.
Yeah,
it's a bit of a dodgy thing to use the term Shanghai out of context.
Yeah. So it's so that this woman has been shanghaied, and she's been living as a man to earn money and things like that, and that's why she was shanghaied, and she has been living as a man on the boat, and when they get to where they're going, the crew are given the choice, this sort of like this forced crew, this slave crew in effect, are given the choice, either sign up or we leave you where we are. And our main character, Red, is having none of it. She instigates a mutiny, and that's where the book starts. And it's great. It's almost like pure condensed anger, this book. That's what it feels like to me, because it's fire, it's blood, it's rage, and it's sort of like it's pure condensed anger into comic form. Even the cover is red and shades of red, and I thought that was just fantastic, and it's just the mood is just right there on the page. It just leaps off at you.
Yeah, I was going to say it's moody, and in the purest sense of the word, in that it's very mood driven. Like the intensity of the mood leaps off the page at you.
Yeah, I mean the art, it's like heavy lines, thick heavy shadow with a painted quality, and it's very heavy and dark. And it really wears its mood on its sleeve, because it comes off, and the way the story goes and the things we see in this book, that is the art is perfect for that, and it's a really good setup to a really good revenge story, because we're hearing a story of people that have been wronged and abused, and they're taking revenge, and it's kind of like has this kind of like old revenge movie quality about it, but without. So the problem some of these revenge movies had, these old revenge films, is they kind of, because they kind of went for shock value, and they came up a little bit trashy at times because of some of the things they were doing.
Sensationalist.
But I don't think this suffers from that, which is good. So it's got like this kind of like really cool revenge movie quality about it, and it's just a very, very promising start to what's going to turn out to be a cool story with like a Western twist, because it's also got a bit of a Western thing going for it as well, hasn't it? And I just really enjoyed it start to finish. The whole book was great, and the artwork's fantastic, and the main character's really cool. She's really strong, and like she's like super driven, and she manages to get this whole crew to kind of work for her. And it's just great the way this goes, the way this book unfolds is just great. And like we were having like a small discussion before the show, and Ray was mentioning how this number one feels like a complete story. It's almost like a one shot, and he's like satisfied by the end of it, or something like that. You were saying, weren't you? If you want to explain.
Yeah, because in contrast to the story I'm going to talk about later, So yeah, I felt like we talk about number ones a lot. I use that sentence a lot when talking on this podcast. But it is difficult to judge a number one of a series because it has a lot of heavy lifting to do. And normally, the way I feel coming away from having read just the number one of a beginning of a story series is that either it's going to do okay or it's going to be bad, and it's never there. It's really hard to find a good number one that can exist on its own because it's pulled all of the things that it needs to do to establish a new story, to establish new characters, to establish a new mood, but have it as a satisfying one little block opening chapter of a whole story. Like it's impossible in some ways. So a lot of the time I come away feeling like, in the worst case scenario, you read number one and it doesn't grab your interest, and you're like, well, I'm not going to pick up number two. It didn't give me enough. It hasn't sold its premise to me, because that's really what a number one is it's almost like reading the back of a book. It's like reading the blurb. It's reading the synopsis, where you should be giving me everything I need to know to get me invested. You should be giving me setting the tone, setting the art style, giving me characters I'm interested in, giving me a story that I care about. And generally, in like the best case scenario, it leaves you wanting more, but maybe it doesn't give you everything that you would want from like an enclosed story. And in the best of circumstances, as I think is the case with Shanghai Red, it gives you this thing where it establishes. So this story, Shanghai Red, it establishes what the plot is, that it's a revenge plot about this woman who has spent her life learning how to pass as a man, and what that means to this story. Like, it's not the be all and end all of this plot. It informs her character and it informs her place in this story. And then we're also told what her drive is. She has this drive to get home and see her family that she was taken away from, and we're invested in that. And she's also not just a one-note character where all she's driven by is this desire to get home, or this desire for bloodlust, or this desire for revenge. Like, it's all of these things intertwined with each other. Excuse me.
Sorry, carry on.
Yeah, and I was going to conclude by saying the fact that it brings all of these things together, and this number one issue ends on a place where even if they didn't make any more, it could happily end there and exist on its own, and I'd be really glad to have read just this one issue. But as it stands, they've given us all of this one complete story about a woman who takes over a ship, and how she goes about it, and what she intends to do with the rest of her life. It could end there as an ambiguous ending, but I'm really pleasantly surprised to find that there's more, and I'm also invested in seeing what she goes on to do next, because it hasn't given away all the details, but it's given me enough to hang on to. So yeah, this I think is the kind of number one that I would hold as the best of its art form.
Yeah,
because
definitely.
it does all of those things, and I'm really enamored with it. And before I hand back to you, I just want to add to the things you were saying, like the artwork. It has this like chalky, almost 3-dimensional, scratchy style to it, and it's overlaid onto like a surprisingly colorful palette. But that color comes from, like, I feel like it's giving you the sickness of being on a boat, and then splashed with the violence of the red of the blood that that happens when she takes over the ship. And then, like, this color's only allowed to shine through these small patches between all the muck and the grime. And it really captures this sickening swaying of being trapped in the hold of a boat. And then when the mutiny occurs and they get to go above board, the backdrops change to these like really beautiful, smooth skies. And it sells this feeling of capture and freedom really well.
Yeah.
And that longing of wanting to go back home, and longing of being back on dry land. And I loved all of it.
She's driven by, I was going to add to you sort of when you're talking about the character, she is driven by survival, and she is driven by the urge to protect what is hers, something that we learn in the book has been instilled in her from an early age. Like, all she knows how to do is survive, and it's great the way they get that across. And in the colours, like you were saying, it's like storm calm.
Yeah.
And it goes hot, cold, hot, cold, hot, cold. The way it does that between panels as well. There's a great page where it sort of goes hot and cold between panels with what's happening and like when like within actions, basically. So you've got cold of someone performing a duty on the boat, and then you've got hot of someone getting stabbed. You know, like as it explains the mutiny, it's sort of like it goes like the sky goes red blue red blue red blue. It's like hot cold hot cold hot cold. It's great. And I just fantastic way that's put together. I just love it.
Yeah, the light and the shadow is really good in this, because there's a lot of holding candles in a darkened, you know, hold of a ship, and how that reflects off of all the people and like the darkened sockets of their eyes and all of that. It's really geniusly done.
And there's a really good double spread towards the end where we get like a kind of a horizon and a night sky, and it's like they're just coming into port. And if you've ever looked out over water and seen lights on the other side, you know, like when maybe you've been to the coast and you've looked across at another part of the coast from where you're standing.
Yeah, and that shimmering quality of the light against the ocean.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I love that. That double page is fantastic when they're pulling into port. It's great.
And also, without giving too much away, there is some tonal shift that happens at some point in the story, which is also like it gives away the quality of the artwork, where we've described this scratchy art style, which is grimy and mucky, and then it follows the same thing through, but then becomes a little bit more delicate and a little bit more wistful. And I think that was a really nice change, and again, really sold the change in mood it was trying to do.
Yeah, definitely, yeah. I really enjoyed it for that. So that is Shanghai Red #1, and that is on sale now if you can find it, digitally and in print. I recommend buying it in print. I always do. But yeah, it's fantastic. And side note, I'm a little bit annoyed because when I was writing my notes this morning, I kind of splashed my copy with coffee, so I promptly went and ordered a new one.
Oh no! Okay.
Got a bit of coffee on the cover.
It would just add to the quality of the story, right? That whole like weathered, beaten thing.
Yeah, I know. It like the minute it happened, it's like the siren went off in my head.
Oh no!
And I was just like, oh yeah, no, I need a new one. So I went and ordered a new copy of it.
Good shout. Yeah, and supporting the artist twice. That's
exactly. Yeah, support comics in print, support artists, support writers. Yeah, it's a brilliant book, and it's great, and it's put on Image Comics, and I urge you all to go out and find it. So the next one we've got on the list is one that I read, which I've been keeping up with, which I've talked about previously. It's the new Hit Girl comic. And speaking of shifting tone, which is what we were talking about just with Shanghai Red when you mentioned it, Ray. But with Hit Girl, this is Hit Girl #5, and we've had a change in creative team.
Okay.
And it's now, she's in a different part of the world. So as I mentioned previously that she was going to be in Canada now. I think I mentioned that in the last show when I did the pull list. Hit Girl in Canada. Now, the creative team for this one, we've got writer Jeff Lemire, artist Eduardo Riso. We've got Patricia Mulvihill doing colours. Clem Robbins is a letterer. Design and production is Melina Mikulik, and editor Rachel Fulton. Got variant covers by Carl Kerschel and Oscar Yildirim. So the cover I've got is the standard one, and it's Hit Girl on her knees, blood everywhere, sword out, and a bear growling behind her. And it just like it is a complete shift in tone from the previous arc, because it's it feels more visceral, slightly darker. The violence hasn't got that cartoon edge to it anymore. It's just like they've stripped that cartoon edge from the violence, and it's just completely different in tone, and it just looks so different when you read it. And I'm not sure if I'm just doing this in my head, because Eduardo Riso has drawn Wolverine books in the past, and it's set in Canada, but it's kind of got this, like, to me it feels like an homage to a Wolverine story. I don't know why. I think that's because of like the hyper violence and everything, like an homage to like a late 80s early 90s Wolverine book kind of thing. So kind of got that going on for it, like in the wilderness.
Canadian rage.
Canadian rage, yeah. Yeah, it's yeah, it has the mood of an old Wolverine title, and I guess that's down to the fact that it's maybe the fact that Eduardo Risso is the artist on this, and I know he's done Wolverine before, and I'm manufacturing that artificially. I don't know. But it's great. The artwork's really good in this. It's like dark shadows, and it's minimalist with the lines. It's only got as many lines as it needs. It's not over busy on the pages. There's not too much detail. Backgrounds aren't over busy either a lot of the time, and it just works really well for what it's doing. When it's displaying sort of like stark snow-covered wilderness in Canada, and also when we've got action going on, sometimes we don't have any background, we just have colours, and it just focuses the panel entirely on what's happening, like the action of Hit Girl stabbing somebody through the leg, or in the eye, or whatever she's doing. And it's even like the Wolverine-ness, even down to the fact that when the book opens, she walks into a bar asking after somebody in this Canadian like shithole bar kind of thing. And she orders a root beer, and the guy's like, don't serve kids, and obviously Hit Girl's a complete party mouth, so yeah, she she just opens with, nice mullet fuckface, give me a root beer. So
oh, Hit Girl.
Yeah, but I think it's great, and yeah, it's darker for me. It's got like a different tone because it's lost that cartoon edge, but for what it is, I still enjoy it, and I enjoy it for different reasons. Because it's like the sugar coating of the Columbia arc was the fact that it looked silly in places when the violence was happening, like people's facial expressions when they were getting kicked in the back of the head and stuff. I thought that was hilarious. But when I'm reading this, I can't laugh at it anymore. And that's why I guess that's why I like it. I like the fact that with this new Hit Girl run, we're getting different creative teams, I guess, as she moves. This is what I assume is going to happen anyway. As she moves across into different places in the world, we're going to get different creative teams, and we're going to get sort of like different facets, we're going to get to see Hit Girl through different lenses, and I quite like that. It's quite cool.
It's a nice idea.
Yeah, so that is Hit Girl number 5, and that is another one on Image Comics. So check that out, yeah. And it's going to be 4 parts. Canada is going to be 4 parts. So Hit Girl 5, Canada part 1 of 4. Check it out. Ray, handing over to you for your next one.
Yeah, so I picked up a new story called By Night by John Allison of Giant Days fame. Art by Christine Larson, colours by Sarah Stern, letters by Jim Campbell. And so to touch back on what we talked about with Shanghai Red, I think By Night is that sort of middle ground of a decent issue 1. So it's not bad enough to make me not want to read the next one, but it also does that thing where it's not giving me quite enough to make me feel like it's an amazing issue on its own, but I'm intrigued enough to see where it's going to go. So By Night, it basically, what it does in this first issue is it sets up some likable but moody characters with some inherent relationship tensions and a dash of sinister behavior and some sci-fi fantasy intrigue, and then almost no context on what the rest of the story will be about, and you're left to want based on the strength of all those previous things. So like these people and the relationships and the setting. And it's just about enough to get me interested, along with the fact that it's written by John Allison, who, I love Giant Days. And that's the reason I picked it up to begin with. So what we get from the get-go is the establishment of 2 lead characters. We get Jane Langstaff, who is a master's in chemistry. She works as a glorified dishwasher, as she puts herself, but the dishes are test tubes instead of dishes. She's bored with her job and clearly insecure about the state of her life, and she expresses this by being sarcastic and misanthropic. And then this routine gets shaken when she bumps into a lady called Heather, who's an old college friend who she hasn't seen in a few years, and she spent those few years reciting in her head exactly what she would say to Heather if they ever bumped into each other again. And from what I gather, she completely fails at this. Like, if you've ever had that thing in your head where you recite exactly how you're going to tell someone off, or you're going to tell them how you feel, and then when it actually comes to it, all of it leaves your head and all that prep was for nothing. I think that's what Jane's going through in this issue. It turns out Heather coerces Jane into exploring an abandoned factory in the city under the guise of making a documentary about the downfall of the company that the factory belonged to. But we, as the reader, we get to see that Heather clearly has some ulterior motives. Like I said, I picked this up because John Allison's other work, Giant Days, is one of my recent favorite finds. And naively, I think I was naively hoping for more of the same. By which I mean, Giant Days does this really well of having loving friendships and like casual hijinks and this whole slice of life deal. And I was expecting this to be more of the same, but it's actually a very different kettle of fish. Where the friendship, well, the quote-unquote friendship we see between Jane and Heather is pretty one-sided, and it's kind of full of manipulation and selfish motives. And because the relationship is driven less by love and more by opportunity, I think the dialogue between them seems to suffer a little as well. So whereas Giant Days has like this witty, bouncy back and forth between like very vibrant leads who have very different dispositions, By Night has like, how do I put it? Like Jane's defensive, stubborn anxiety, fighting with Heather's sort of manipulative, flippant belligerence. And it's a bit frustrating because it clashes and it feels like neither party is actually communicating with each other. But when I read it a second time, I think maybe this is by design. Like they are two different people who fell apart and now are coming together for very different reasons for each other. Like I think Jane has something to prove to Heather, but Heather wants something from Jane. And like there's this inherent tension in all of that, which is actually the thing that gets me the most intrigued for, issue 2 and beyond, because I want to see where that's going, even though it's not the thing that I'm normally drawn to. But like with all of this, we get smatterings of a larger story hiding in the background. Like I mentioned, I alluded to a sci-fi fantasy edge to it, which I don't want to go into, mostly because it occurs in the last few pages of the book, and there's no context for the rest of that given, apart from maybe one or two hints about some weird characters who are standing in the street and whatever. I'm not going to get into that. But it's just enough to push me into issue 2. And like one thing I really do like about it is the art style. It has this like fluffy, soft-edged vibe, which is similar to a lot of other Boom Studio comics. This is a Boom comic. So like Giant Days and like Lumberjanes, for example. And so Christine Larson, the artist, she captures Jane's like closed off insecurity and defensiveness really well in like the way she postures her and how she hunches and looks around with suspicion. And like Heather's persistent and desperate attempts at arm twisting comes across in like the way she scowls and they make great expressive use of the character's eyes in close-ups to show like when the facade drops, because they're both hiding things from each other in a way. And when the characters think they aren't being watched, that thing drops, but we as the reader get to see it, and that's pretty interesting, and it gets across really well on the page. So I guess overall I'm left a little bit disappointed, but only because I think we've said this in the past as well, but expectation is a bit of a killer, and you shouldn't let that cloud your judgment. I guess I don't really like the leads all that much, but then I'm not sure I'm supposed to at this point. Again, coming off the back of Giant Days, and I can't keep referencing it back to that because it is its own story, it's its own thing. So I'm gonna have to try and divorce myself from that. But it's a tough line to strike, and I think John Allison is playing the longer game to see how these two young women grow into this strained friendship, or this forced friendship that they're both entering into again. And I think we'll see that change as the story goes on. So I'm willing to hold on to it, read the next few issues, see where it goes. And I think it ends in a way that makes me think issue 2 will properly establish the tone and the context of the full series. So that's By Night. Issue 1 came out last week, which would have been the 20th of June, I believe. Could be right, could be wrong, but it's a very recent one.
June 20th, you're right.
Yeah. So yeah, check it out if you're into that kind of thing, especially like this whole tension back and forth, hiding from each other, relationship dealy stuff.
Yeah. So, I'm gonna gush now for about 10 minutes.
What are you gonna talk about, Greg?
What do you think I'm going to talk about, Ray?
It's either going to be Transformers or TMNT or something disgustingly violent and Mel.
It's TMNT universe.
Right.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles universe, number 23. And the reason I wanted to talk about this book is because when I was younger, and I was still a Turtles fan when I was younger. My favourite turtle was Raphael. In recent times, probably over the past, we'll say 7 years, maybe, my favourite turtle has become Michelangelo. And through the IDW comics, my favourite turtle has become Michelangelo. And I have, as of the 2012 cartoon series and the IDW comics, I have another favourite, my second favourite character in the Turtles. Like, the reason that I like the Mutanimals is Mondo Gecko. He's a skateboarding mutant lizard. That's pretty much all you need to know about him. And him and Mikey are buddies, and you kind of get this like this kind of thing a lot in the comics where you kind of know they're buddies and they go off skateboarding together and stuff like that. And those two are kind of like I don't know how to put it, like the Bill and Ted of the Turtles world, I guess. And I love them. They're like two of my favorite characters. And in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles universe number 23, they're getting their own buddy mutant story where it's like these two like working together, kicking ass and taking names, and it's everything I've always wanted. So yeah, I mean, so to give you a bit of a background with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles universe comics are, it's basically what Detective Comics is to the main Bat books, except it's in continuity with the main ongoing Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles story. So things that happen in the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles main book are referenced in the TMNT universe book, and they have an effect on each other. So like, there might be something going on in the universe books that will be referenced in the main ongoing story, and it will say, to find out more about what's happening here, check out this book, kind of thing, like the editor's notes. And it's kind of like it's a good way. The universe books are a good way to give context and to give background to certain actions or decisions characters might make or have made in the main book, and also a good way to explore relationships between different characters, and to give like explore origins of characters as well in places, which it has done, which is really cool. And I'm really into that as a thing. Like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, like the universe books are a great way. Like if you like if you love a universe, if you love a character and you want to know more about the world around that character, I like it when you get a book like this that kind of does that. You know, I enjoy that. And what we've got here in this story, so this is like there's usually two stories in each book, so you kind of get like two comics for the price of one almost. And in the first story in the book, which is the sort of like the main story, which is like the cover story, we've got like this awesome cover of it's Mikey and Mondo sort of like standing there, like leaping into action, like grimaces on their faces, ready for a fight kind of thing, and it's really cool. So the Mutanimals, a team of mutant animals that were created by a bioweapon manufacturer called Null Industries. They've been messing around with mutagen, creating mutants and trying to sell them as bioweapons to like military and stuff like that. The Mutanimals escaped. They formed their own little group, and they're like a ragtag group of like mutant kind of heroes / anti-heroes. They're sort of neutral because obviously their interest. I mean, like, they want to free mutants. They want mutants to have equal rights with people and everything else in the world. And sometimes they're on the wrong side of things, and that's more down to their leader, Hob, who is a mutant cat. There's a member of the Mutanimals called Seymour Guts, who is also known as Mutagen Man. And he's called Seymour Guts because he is literally he's literally disembodied organs in a tank. That's the best way to describe him. And he was created by Null Industries because they were trying to fuse different types of animal DNA and to create one kind of chimera type thing, one beast. And obviously the only way he can survive is in a tank of mutagen. And they have to sort of keep him in this tank. And he's been treated terribly. He has like PTSD and everything because he was like treated horribly in the lab and everything else. And he's depressed. And they managed to kind of bring him out of that funk a little bit, the Mutanimals, because they make friends with him and they treat him nicely. And it's Mondo that names him. Mondo says, we're going to call you Seymour. Seymour's your name, as in Seymour Guts. Get it? Kind of thing. Because they wanted to give him like a more personable name, because when he was in the lab, he didn't have a name. He was just Mutagen Man. Yeah, he's so Mondo's trying to cheer him up. This is how the book opens, because there's been an altercation with the Earth Protection Force, the EPF, which are like a government agency that kind of they don't like mutants at all. They think mutants and aliens and whatever have no place on Earth, and they just want to get rid of it, or they want to like erase them from the planet because they see them as a threat. And Mutagen Man came off pretty badly. He got tore up pretty bad. His suit got tore up, and he's just sort of like in a tank, unable to move, like bedridden, for want of a better way of explaining it. And he's not doing very well. He's in real ailing health. And obviously, Mondo wants to do something about that. So to cut a long story short, he decides he's going to get the equipment that needed to fix him, to fix his buddy, by breaking into the EPF, the Earth Protection Force building. And he decides that he's going to go to the Turtles for backup. Of course, the rest of them are out on patrol, and there's only Mikey in the lair. So it's just him and Mikey working together. Because he has an argument with Hob, because Hob won't let the Mutanimals go on the mission. He says it's too dangerous and they're not in the best shape and whatever. And Mondo's like, screw that, screw the system and everything else. Because he's a teenager. And he listens to heavy metal and everything, and he's a little bit petulant, and he doesn't like doing as he's told all the time and stuff like that. He's quite, why should I do that kind of thing? He's a bit of a rebel. So he goes off with Mikey, and they break into the EPF, and it's just really cool, like, how these two interact together, like Mikey pulling Mondo back from the brink and telling him, anger's no good for you, buddy. You need to calm down, because he's like really angry about the fact his friend might die and stuff like that. And it's really cool how they've got this relationship going with those two. Like, Mikey's like the voice of reason, and he's like trying to help Mondo, and it's really good. Like, he's trying to help Mondo come to terms with everything and offer him advice. At the same time, they're trying to get done this mission. And the book ends on a firecracker of a cliffhanger, because, well, the story ends on a firecracker of a cliffhanger, because Mondo has absolutely had enough, and he's snapped, and he's standing there with an iron bar in his hand, and there's like a load of EPF agents in front of him, and he's just like, I'm not backing down. Come and get it, you fascist pigs, kind of thing. It's great. I love it. It's just so cool how they've done that, and how they've got him as like this kind of like rebel, and it's fucking brilliant. And then like there's like two stories in each book, but I'll come on to the next one next, because like the art in this first one is really cool. It's like I've encountered this particular artist's work on previous Turtles books before. It's Pablo Tunica, and it's like really loose lines. Well, not really loose lines, but it's like really fluid, really rounded edges. Everything's kind of like bouncy, and there's a lot of movement, and it's really cool and really nicely put together. And I guess it is kind of loose. It's kind of loose artwork, and I like that. But it's still detailed, and it's still really nicely detailed. And coupled with Patricio Del Pesce's colours, it's beautiful, because his colours are really like how do I put this, like watercolours almost. and they like they flow together, and everything just kind of flows like water across the pages, and it's really cool how it looks. Like, because it's like everything's kind of like flowing together, and everything's nice and colourful, and everything's fluid, and it's just great. And the writing's fantastic, and as I said before, it's everything I always wanted. It's like my two favourite characters working together on a mission. The second story is called Nobody Cares, and that is by Rich Douek and Bram Revel. I should mention the first story is writer Ryan Ferrier, Pablo Tunica is the artist, colour is Patricia Delpeche. We've got a letterer for the whole book is Sean Lee, editor is Bobby Curnow, and our publisher is Greg Goldstein. And this is published on IDW Books. So second one is Bram Revel is the artist, and he does art and colours. And Rich Douek is the writer, and the story is called Nobody Cares. And the second one focuses on a character called Nobody, who, bit of background, is she was part of a street gang called the Purple Dragons, and she worked with Casey Jones. And now she has like a kind of enhancement cybernetic ninja suit, which was built by a scientist called Harold, who has worked with Donatello on a few inventions and helped Donnie with the technology. And she goes around as a vigilante, basically called Nobody. And she comes sort of like crosses paths with a mutant created by Null Industries who works for Null Industries. She's got like a kind of a bit of a mercenary mentality. Like, she doesn't give a shit really, as long as she's being treated nicely and being paid. And she's called Zodi, and she's a mutant scorpion. And it's just these two crossing paths and having a fight, and it's a short story. And the artwork is like really angular, sort of like flat blocked colours. And it just works really well for the action. And because this is basically just a fight scene across a few pages, which is really cool. I love it. It works really well for that, because the way the artwork is, it works really well for action, and the way it conveys movement and everything else is like really kinetic. I love it. And yeah, just the whole book's really good, and I want number 24 now, because I want the next part of this Mikey and Mondo story. So yeah, it's a really cool book, and I just wanted to talk about that one particularly, because I want to talk about this story with my two favourite characters being buddies. So yeah, there we go. I want cool. my Mikey and Mondo buddy cop movie.
I feel like you got something out of your system just then.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So that one gets
happier now.
Yeah, that gets like 8 slices of deep dish out of 8, because you can't cut a pizza into anything less than 8. Imagine trying to cut a pizza into 5. That's just blasphemy.
Make a pentagram.
You could, but there'd be more than 5 pieces.
Yeah, it would be more than 5 pieces. Yeah. You'd have like a horrible middle bit as well. Yeah, you wouldn't be able to hold from any of the edges.
That's just horrible. You just get bits that are just all pizza and no crust, and you get bits that are all crust and no pizza. It's just, why would you do that to yourself?
Well, something for everyone. Not everybody likes the crust. Not everybody likes the pizza.
Pentagram
Everybody
Pizza.
likes the pizza. It's weird. Yeah.
Pentagram Pizza. There we go. So I think that brings us to a close, doesn't it? Because I was going to start talking about Batman comics as well, but then I decided that it's best to leave that until the weddings happened, and then I can gush about it all at once.
That seems sensible. Yeah.
And it turns out, according to our pull list, that the wedding is happening on the 4th of July, but I'll come to that in a moment. So so that brings us on to the pull list. So this is everything to look forward to for the next 2 weeks. And the day this episode is released, which will be the 27th of the 6th, 2018, we've got, well, this is my pull list, is actually quite stacked. So the past couple of weeks have felt like the calm before the storm, because there's been less comics, and now we've got like this whole kind of like collection of coming here in the next 2 weeks, things that I should point out that you guys should buy if you want to. So we've got Realm number 7. The Realm being the comic published on Image, which is it's a really cool kind of like Walking Dead meets The Last of Us meets Dungeons and Dragons meets the post-apocalypse kind of thing, and it's really awesome how that all comes together and works in this book. I love it. We've got Blackwood number 2. Blackwood we've talked about previously on the last episode, in fact. I believe we talked about Blackwood, which is the kind of like the supernatural Dark Horse book about the cursed school. We've got one that I sort of pulled off the list. This is a hardcover that's being released, a trade. This is Neil Gaiman's A Study in Emerald, and Neil Gaiman's A Study in Emerald. And the reason I picked this up is it's a comic adaptation of a prose story that Neil Gaiman wrote, and it's set in the world of Sherlock Holmes. It's basically Sherlock Holmes versus Cthulhu. And they're trying to solve a murder that's obviously tied to the bizarre cosmic horror of the kind of like Lovecraft mythos. So that's why that one interested me. And that's A Study in Emerald, so that's quite cool. We've got Harrow County number 32, which is going to be the conclusion of Harrow County, which I'm looking forward to because it means I can buy the last trade when that comes out. This is it, the final issue of Harrow County. Emmy with the... Well, I'm not going to read that bit because I don't want to tell you what happens, because I don't want to know what happens. But yeah, it's it's the end of Harrow County. So if you've been following the sort of like single issues, then that's going to be the end. I'm sure it's going to be very, very like how do I describe it? Very Lock and Key-ish when it ends, as in like how I felt when I read the end of Lock and Key. It's probably how I'm going to feel when I read the end of this. So yeah, Harrow County number 32. We've got the Diablo House trade paperback coming out next week, which is going to be like the first 4 issues of Diablo House collected into a singular trade for your perusal and enjoyment. Yeah, I've talked about this book before. It's really cool. If you like your horror comics, if you like your old school horror comics, this is where you're going to go to get your fix. It's great. Do it. Buy it, read it. We've also got another prelude to the wedding. So we've got like the Batman prelude to the wedding comics that I've been talking about in previous weeks. We've had the Red Hood, we've had Batgirl, we've had Ra's al Ghul and Robin, we've had Nightwing and Hush, and now we've got Harley versus Joker. We've got Detective Comics 983, Marvel 2-in-1 number 7, which is the Human Torch and the Thing, which I think is sort of like slowly leading us into a new Fantastic Four, which I'm looking very much forward to. We've got Multiple Man number 1 coming out next week. So Multiple Man he's an X-Men character. He's, according to the previews website, a handful of people's favourite X-Man, Jamie Madrox, was alive for a while, then he was dead. Now he's not. But he will be again if he doesn't kill himself, if trying to make sure he doesn't die. He will be again if he doesn't kill himself trying to make sure he doesn't die. I did read that sentence correctly, didn't I? Yeah. It makes sense when you read it. Trust us. That's literally what it says on the preview. In his fight to not die, Jamie has stumbled across a threat even greater than his own death. But fixing it might make it worse. Can he save the world from himself? On top of all of that, the X-Men are mad at him now, and a mysterious new group of foes is after him too. We can't tell you who they are, but they're pretty great.
This sounds good.
Yeah.
The cover's really cool as well. For this
and
one.
It's number 1 of 5. So it's going to be a fairly short run as well. And the cover's really cool, yeah, with the multiple men, like paper cutout men, and then he's in the middle of it there. And yeah, I'm looking forward to this. I'm hoping it's as weird as that preview is. So yeah, I kind of want to read that and clear up the confusion that preview was sown. We've got Sentry number 1, which is the return of Sentry straight out of the pages of Doctor Strange, which kind of looks kind of cool. I don't know I've put it on my pull list because it might be something you guys are interested in. I'm not totally sure if I'm going to pick it up or not yet, but it's there. We've got Star Wars Lando Double or Nothing number 2 as well, which we talked about the first one last episode. And it's issue 2, so we're going to find out more about Lando and more about the events that lead up to the Solo movie that's been in the cinemas recently. So Ray, where are we with you on the 27th?
So for the 27th, I've got, give me 1 second, something that I looked at because it looks like your kind of thing, something called Bedtime Games. It's a Dark Horse comic. And again, just the cover, it has a mummy holding like a leather-bound tome, like in defense, holding it in front of himself. I just thought the cover looked really cool.
Yeah.
Brand new horror from Nick Keller and Connor Nolan and Kelly Fitzpatrick. They've all written for stuff like Death Head, Jim Henson, Storyteller's Giants, Shade the Changing Girl. It's about summer comes to an end. Three friends start senior year with a bang by exploring the mysterious past of their school. But before the night is over, their adventure turns into trouble when the kids set loose an evil that seeks to prey on their worst nightmares. I thought that seems like a very Greg story. So I think you personally should just go ahead and take a look at the cover for that. It's kind of cool.
I will.
And then there's Saga number 53, which I believe is the season finale for this latest arc. And apparently it's going to be an explosive and the most shocking storyline yet. So that's got me interested. And then there's Ms. Marvel 31, where they're celebrating the 50th issue. And I think Saladin Ahmed is writing for this one alongside G. Willow Wilson and a few others. So that'll be interesting. I believe there was another surprise to go along with this, which I was really excited about on Twitter, and now the name has escaped me, so I'll try and put this in the show notes if I remember. But there's some other thing that was interesting me about this specific issue. And that's all I have for the 27th.
Yeah, so we'll move on to the 4th of July, which is the following week. And there's a few things here that I'm going to mention. We've got Sword Daughter number 2, so if you're into your Vikings and your revenge tales, that's where you go. We've talked about that previously as well. Check out the last episode. We've got Batman number 50, which will be the wedding. So I'm looking forward to that. I want to know what's going to happen, and I'm probably going to gush about this entire build up to this, with the best man storyline involving the Joker and everything else. Like, I'll just gush about it all at once. It's great. Catwoman's getting her own solo series, and we've got Catwoman number 1. I think it's Joelle Jones working on that. And we've got Ghostbusters Crossing Over number 4. We've got Judge Dredd Under Siege number 2. Death or Glory number 3, which is a fantastic little book. Gravediggers Union number 8. And Cosmic Ghost Rider number 1. And I picked out Cosmic Ghost Rider number 1 because this is Donny Cates and Jeff Shaw. Jeff Shaw did the cover for this, and it's beautiful. And we've got Dylan Burnett on art duties. Exploding from the pages of Thanos. So if you remember when I've talked about the recent Donny Cates Thanos run, Frank Castle, the Punisher, in this future is the Ghost Rider, and he's the Cosmic Ghost Rider because he also became a herald of Galactus for a while. Frank Castle was the Punisher. He made a deal with the devil that made him the Ghost Rider. He made a deal with Galactus that made him Cosmic. A deal with Thanos made him dead. Not to worry, though. He's coming back, and he's got a plan to make the universe a better place. It's going to lead him into an even crazier adventure than he's ever been in. Join hot new comic and cosmic writer Donny Cates, Thanos, Doctor Strange, as he pushes his wildest creation past breaking point. So yeah, Cosmic Ghost Rider. I should mention as well that Donny Cates has also done stuff with Image. He's done Redneck, which I'm reading an awful lot of. He's done God Country, which I've got, and which we've talked about as well. We've talked about both Redneck and God Country. And yeah, he just seems to be everywhere at the moment, and I'm not complaining because I like him. So yeah, Cosmic Ghost Rider number 1's one to check out. So Ray, what have we got for you for 4th of July?
Right, so before I go on to the 4th of July, I just want to go back and touch on the Ms. Marvel number 31, which is coming out on the 27th.
Yeah.
The additional writer for that is Hassan Minhaj, who I absolutely adore. If you don't know who he is a correspondent for The Daily Show. He also gained some additional fame on top of, being on The Daily Show for the 2017 Correspondence Dinner, where he tore down the institution. That was an amazing speech. If you Google that, there's the version of it on YouTube, which is well worth checking out. And he's also got a Netflix stand-up show called Homecoming King, which I love it. It's so relatable on so many levels for just people of color, for Indian background, because he's Muslim, living in America, and just that thing you feel being a person of color, being a minority in very Western culture, and all the things that come with it that may go unspoken to people who may not know about it. I'd really, really highly recommend checking out the Netflix show Homecoming King, and he's going to be a guest writer on Ms. Marvel number 31, and that had me really excited when G. Willow Wilson announced that. So moving on to the 4th of July, another Ms. Marvel related thing is called Marvel Rising, Squirrel Girl / Ms. Marvel number 1. I don't know what it is. It's got Ms. Marvel in it. I'm going to check it out. And then something called Billionaire Killers, which is a Black Mask Studio comic. And it asks, what if the children of the 0.0001% reject their family legacies of global brutality and tear down the billionaire patriarchy? And that sounds amazing on its own. The cover is really striking. It's got this like pop art yellow skulls with like vibrant pink background licking ice cream. I think it's by Alexis Ziritt, which is one of your favorites. Is that right, Greg?
Yes.
Yeah. So I think just based on that alone, I'm in. I think it's illustrated by Sully, written by Matteo Pizzola, covers by Alexis Ziritt, Sully, and Amanke. Oh, I'm going to butcher this name. This is awful. Nahulapan, but we'll leave notes in the show notes, and you can butcher that name for yourselves if you like.
Alexis Ziritt is one of my favourite artists of all time, and if you like what you see, if you check out the cover for Billionaire Killers and you're into that kind of art, then go back and check out his book, Space Riders.
Yes, Space Riders. It looks very much like just the art in Space Riders. That's a very cool cover. The one thing that caught my eye was I don't know who wrote this article regarding this book, Billionaire Killers, but the title of the article is Black Mask Studios Billionaire Killers asks, what if Ivanka got woke? Right? I'm in. I'm all into it.
Sold.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely. So yeah, that's the pull list, I guess. Is that everything? Got anything left?
From me.
Yeah, that's it. We're empty, buckets empty, tipping it upside down, nothing left. So that will bring us to a close. That has been Ace Comicals episode number 38. You can find us on Facebook under Ace Comicals. You can find us on Twitter under Ace Comicals. That's at Ace Comicals. You can find us on the internet. Yes, that's right. That ethereal thing that connects everyone under www.acecomicals.com, where you will find links to everything we do elsewhere. You will find a link to our Instagram page where we are Ace Comicals, where you can see me posting pretty pictures of comics and the occasional stupid video of my face. You will find us to listen to on Apple Podcasts, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, and Castro. You can find me on Twitter under @Bato. That's BATTOU. Ray, where can we find you?
Yeah, on Twitter @Monkeh, so that's @MOONKEH.
You can get in touch with us via our Twitter feed. You can send us questions through the DMs. You can send me questions on Twitter. You can get in touch with us via our email address, which is acecomicals@gmail.com. And if you are so inclined, you can buy us a coffee. We have a Ko-fi page or coffee page, or however you're supposed to say it. And that is under the... There's a link to that on our website. And you could, if you are so inclined, you can donate to us the price of a single coffee. All proceeds go to the cost of keeping the website running and keeping the podcast hosted. And that draws us to a close. So thanks for listening. Ace Comicals, over and out.